Today is October the 3rd, 2018. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I'm in Kiowa, Oklahoma, to speak with Wayne Sexton, and along with us is Bradley Hamilton. And this is part of our project that we're calling Oklahoma's Conservation Heritage Oral History Project, and it's a collaboration between OSU and the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society and NRCS. So thank you for coming, or thank you for letting me come today. Let's begin with learning a little bit about you. When and where were you born?
I was born December the 23rd, 1933, 7 miles south of Pittsburgh, Oklahoma, on the Bar Diamond Ranch.
Okay.
And it was the Union Chapel community.
And tell me a little bit about your parents.
Well, my mother was raised on the farm, my dad was raised on the farm and a ranch. And that's all they ever done or knew, was farming and ranching. Excuse me. My dad on the Bar Diamond Ranch there, he raised cattle, and he run about 25, 30 head of mares, and he raised a lot of mules. And excuse me, he worked about 10 men, and they worked for $1 a day, and they put in a full day, and they done all the farming with mules. So we broke mules, raised mules and broke them and sold them. Sold a lot of mules. That was about as big. Part of that program is the cattle program out there. I think he run about 150 head of cows out there. And of course, my mother was she's a housewife, but she always had a garden.
Did some canning?
Canned.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or were they originally from Pittsburgh County or nearby?
my dad was born down here in Atoka County, and at Wardville, Oklahoma, and my mother was born over Hartshorn.
Okay, so same neck of the woods then.
Do what?
Same neck of the woods then. Right. And your brothers and sisters?
Mine?
Uh-huh.
I've got 2 sisters, Ellen McLennan, and she's a year older than me, and I had another sister, Lonnie Newberry, and she was a year younger than me, and she passed away it's been about 5 years ago.
And you were the middle and the only son?
Yes.
What kind of chores would you have to do?
Well, this is a pretty good list. We had we burned wood and coal for heat and cooking, and of course I fed horses, put hay in their manger, and if we had any sick cattle up, I usually fed them, and done a lot of horseback riding out in the pastures. Many days it went by we didn't ride out in the pastures, and we had had feed grounds scattered over the ranch, which there was 4,500 acres in that ranch, and we had feed grounds at each pasture, and had feed houses at each feed ground, and we hauled that feed. It was hauled into the ranch headquarters on a truck. Then we hauled it in wagons to the feed grounds, and the roads weren't too good, so them trucks didn't try to get to those feed grounds. But we rode a horseback every day to each one of those feed grounds, and had it fenced off, and we'd go in and pour out the feed, and then tried to get a head count, and if it looked like it was all there, we'd open the gates and turn them in. And while they were eating feed, we always led another horse with us that was in harness, and we had a sled at each one of these feed grounds, and had a big hay barn at each feed ground. And while those cattle were eating, we'd hook his mare to the sled and go out to the hay barn and load it with hay and sled it out in the pasture and put it out. And that's the way we done our feeding. That was a big part of my chores. I had another chore that I carried in all the coal and the wood. My mother cooked and hated with wood and coal. And nearly all those boys that worked there every time I got up about 9 or 10 years old. I was younger than that. I was born in 33, and that was only about 40 or 40, about 41. All these ranch hands, of course, had a horse there, you know, and they had their saddles. And they rode these Frank Vila saddles. That was a cowboy saddle. Anybody that's a real cowboy rode a Frank Vila saddle. And I've got one out here. I'll show you after a while. And I wanted one of those Frank Vila saddles. The old saddle I had was one I guess somebody threw away. It didn't even have a leather cover on the horn. It had old iron horn and old high back. I wanted one of those Frank Vila saddles. Well, my dad told me, he said, if you bring in all the wood and all the coal every day, 7 days a week, and those saddles cost $50, and he said when you get $50 worked out, which would have been 50 weeks, we'll go buy you a Frank Vila saddle. So by the time I got the $50 worked out, World War II come along, and Frank Vila was a German. And of course, he left the country. I don't know where he went, but anyhow, he quit making saddles. And you couldn't buy one because the boys that had them didn't want to sell them, and they didn't make new ones anymore. So he was going up to the stockyards at Oklahoma City one weekend, and he took me with him, and he took me to a saddlery there in Cowtown there in Oklahoma City. And I found a little Hereford saddle made in Yoakum, Texas, or Yoakum made in Hereford, I can't remember. But anyway, I liked it, but it cost $90. And I wanted this saddle, and so my dad said, well, if you want to work 40 more weeks, I'll buy you that saddle. And I said, okay. So he bought me the saddle, and I worked 40 more weeks, and had it paid for. And I was so proud of that saddle that if I was out riding in the pasture, I might be a mile from the house. If the sun went behind the cloud, I run my horse all the way back home to the barn and pull that saddle off, put it up so it wouldn't get rained on, and put my old saddle on and went back. But I sold that saddle several years later and bought me another saddle that was bigger, and I liked it better. But I really wish I'd have kept that old saddle. I worked 90 weeks for it to pay for it.
Well, did he let you use it before you paid for it?
Oh yeah.
He didn't make you just look at it until you'd earned the other 40?
Yeah, he bought me the saddle that day, and I started using it.
Okay.
Because I guess he knew I was gonna be there.
That you were good for it, huh?
Yeah. And I wouldn't have took a chance at all on getting it locked up to where I couldn't use it. Of course, I don't know if he'd have done that or not. I doubt if he would have.
Well, did your sisters do horseback riding too?
Yeah, they done a little bit, but nothing like I did. They stayed around the house mostly. My oldest sister lives about 3 miles out here. She married a boy that we went to high school with, and he was a rodeo cowboy too. He passed away about
3 years ago.
And he and I rodeoed a lot together.
Okay.
And we had another friend here that lived by us here that he won 2 world titles, and he rodeoed with us quite a bit too. We done a lot of traveling, had a lot of fun.
Well, did your dad lose a lot of his helpers for the war during the war?
Did do what?
Did a lot of the men that were working for your dad leave for the war?
Yeah, they started drafting them boys, and there wasn't no way he could keep farming like he was farming. So the international place there in McAllister, my dad knew him real well, and he had a ranch over south of Hartshorn, and he went up there and he traded 11 head of mules for a brand new H-Farm all tractor. And me and my dad took those 11 mules and we cut through the country. And my dad went in front leading one of the mules, and I rode behind, and we took them all the way over south of Hartshorn like that. And then he had a little half-ton pickup with sideboards on it. And my mother come over in it, and we loaded the 2 horses. We rode up in that pickup and come back home. Didn't have to ride back home.
About how far is that cross country?
It's probably from here 20 miles maybe.
It's a good 20 miles, I imagine.
So it took you a good part of a day?
Oh yeah,
Did it?
because we didn't get in any hurry. We just walked them, you know.
So how much was a mule worth?
Oh golly, them mules back then would bring, it wasn't nothing from bring $300, and some bring as much as $500. But by the time that he traded those for that tractor, I don't know, they wasn't worth near that much then, because, you know, people quit using them.
Right.
And, but he always had 1 or 2 hands, and they farmed that tractor. A lot of times they'd run out of time, you know, and they had somebody drive the tractor and farm in the daytime, and then somebody drive it at night. And I worked both shifts, you know, wherever I needed to be. And what we farmed at night, the tractor didn't have lights on it, but he took it to an old blacksmith there in Kiowa, and he fixed it up, put lights on it. So that way we were able to work at night.
Well, how old were you when you got to drive it for the first time?
I was probably about 10 years old,
Young.
about
Huh.
10. And I liked it. I liked it better than I did driving the mules. I was telling Bradley, my dad invented a deal. You got that picture of that thing?
I don't know if you wrote it on here or not, but I can I wrote it on something.
I wrote it on the back of one of those sheets.
Put it on the back.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's on the back.
I still got it.
But Boy, I don't know, I was probably 9 years old. There it is. He set a post here in the ground and put a wagon wheel on it. And then he run two big 4x4s out here and one over here and put wagon wheels on them. Then, of course, he had it tied together, you know, and had it fixed where he tied here. Then he made a little cart and hooked on the back of it here with wagon wheels on it. And like I said, he was short-handed, you know, so he'd hook up 2 mules up in here in this thing and put me back here in this cart. Of course, it had lines coming back. And when the mules walked, this thing was on a pivot here, and this thing went around and around and around. And I sat there many hours driving them mules. That's why we broke them. But I had driven them mules enough, I didn't care a whole lot about having to drive them mules. So I was really tickled when I got that tractor, and I got to learn how to drive that tractor.
I know they use a lot of mules were used during the war. Were any of yours, do you know?
Do what?
Were they used during the war, your mules? Any from your
Yeah,
dad's?
we always kept some, like we hauled feeding wagons, and when we baled hay, we hauled hay in on wagons, and gosh, I guess we kept mules till we left over there in 1948.
Did you name them?
I guess they all had names. I know some of them did, but those that I was driving on that machine that he rigged up, I never did name them. I just drove them. But he put about 6 or 8 sacks of cottonseed cake on that trailer that weighed 100 pounds a sack. That's so they had some weight to pull, you know. And it didn't take too long to wear them down, pulling that thing.
Well, it was pretty smart of him to figure out that contraption.
Yeah, I never saw another or heard of another, but he figured that out himself.
He would have been an engineer in today's time, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or where did you go to elementary school?
Pittsburgh.
Grades 1 through?
I went through the middle of the 9th grade at Pittsburgh, and then we sold out down there. And he bought a place over here, between here and Wardville, it's called 5 Mile. He bought a place over there, and then when we moved over, I started school at Limestone Gap and graduated there.
Okay. In what year?
51.
51. Okay. Were you in 4-H or FFA?
I was in 4-H in grade school and FFA in high school, and me and my sister both showed we showed the calves and the hogs and the sheep, and me and one of my sisters had grand champion steer up there one year, and those champion steers, of course, back then cattle probably bring 20-25 cents a pound. They'd bring about 60-65 cents a pound. Mm. And the year I had the grand champion, he was one of the best calves that had ever been. And when I took him through the sale, he brought 92 cents a pound. He weighed a little over 800 pounds. Wow. So I got rich there one day.
And what did you do with it?
Well, I wound up buying I bought me 2 or 3 cows, and I don't know what I done the rest of it. That's when I started in the cow business.
So you didn't buy another saddle?
No, not then. I didn't. I still had that one that that one that he bought me, I had it for years after I got out of college.
Well, did you go to the Kansas City, wherever all the FFA and 4-H goes to compete? Did you go?
American Royal.
Uh-huh.
I've been to that show up there one time, but I won a trip up there. They put me on a train, sent me up there and paid my hotel and everything while I was up there. And I think the best I remember that was 4-H, the county extension done that. And I got to stay up there 4 or 5 days and got to go around. There was one or two, I believe it was 2 other boys from Pittsburgh County that went up there with me, which I was glad they did, you know. But that was the only time I went to the American Royal. And
Was that as further as you've been from home at that time?
probably was.
Yeah. And on a train? Is that the first
yeah,
time you've been
I
on a
believe
train?
that's the first time I ever rode a train.
Quite an adventure.
Yes, it was. I really enjoyed it, but I know I showed a champion hog. I can't remember if the girls did or not, but all of us showed champion sheep. My dad run a lot of sheep too. He run about 100 head of ewes. And he had the best sheep herd in this country. There was a lot of people that come there and buy rims, you know, to use on their sheep. And
Did you learn how to shear them?
well, I could kind of trim them up. I never did do much of that shearing. He always had some guys come in that, well, I remember when I was a little boy, him and the guys that worked there, they had these old hand shears. They sheared them. And, but I never did do that. And, later on, after all them boys left, he had an outfit that would come in there and they had shears and they sheared them.
It sounds like you worked a whole lot all the way through high school.
Well, I just stayed busy, but I never did have time to get in much trouble.
I was going to say, what did you do for fun?
Oh, there was a couple other boys that lived over in that valley and about my age. And they'd have parties and different things at schools. They had a Union Chapel school, and then, what is it, about 10 miles over to Wesley, maybe not quite that far. They'd have things over there and different things around the community. And we always went horseback. And in fact, 2 or 3 years, I come to this Kiowa rodeo over here. It was 10 miles, and I rode horseback to that rodeo. And Daddy had a friend that lived here and had a barn, and I kept my horse in his barn and he let me stay in his house until the rodeo was over, and then I'd ride back home.
Well, you said you participated in rodeos. What would you do?
Well, I've done a little bit of everything. I tried to ride bulls and broncs, and that I didn't like it too good. I got too many sore spots, and so I started roping calves, and then I team roped. And the last 6 years I rodeoed. I roped steers. That's where you trip them, jerk them down time. I was fortunate enough to make national finals all 6 years, but I never did win them. But I was roping against some good ropers. I placed, you know, but won a little money, but I never did win the roping.
Well, after high school, what did you do?
I went to college at Stillwater.
Oklahoma A&M?
For 4 years.
Where did you live?
We just rented apartments or houses there in town. One little house we lived in down there longer. Well, the first we moved into an apartment, and it was 32 and a half a month, and they paid the bills. And then I moved closer to the campus, and of course didn't have a car, and
Didn't take your horse.
no, didn't have no place to put my horse. I did have a bicycle, but we lived closer to town. We did the campus. But she worked for a dentist there for years. She walked to work and back, and I rode my bicycle because I had to do a lot of running around the campus on that bicycle, and didn't hardly have time to get to the classes if I walked, you know. But
They got married before school because they got married when they were 17.
That's what I was going to back up and say. When we say we, who are we referring to?
yeah, that was Joyce, my wife. And I went to a basketball game over here in Pittsburgh. It was when I was still in high school. And they were playing Ashland. I was going to school in Limestone Gap, but I went over to watch a ball game. And her folks had moved up here from Texas on a ranch about, I think it's 9 miles west of here. And she was playing ball, and I was sitting there with some boys, and I told them, I said, I asked Graham to find out who she was, you know, and I said, I'm gonna hook up with that shiny little heifer. And I did. And we've been married, in August was married 67 years.
Wow. And what's the secret?
I just always minded her pretty good. No, she's been a good wife. She's works with me and does everything she does, and does a lot more now. You know, I broke my hip back in April, and I messed up my right knee. Had surgery on it 3 times, and there's a lot of stuff I can't do now. And she jumps right in there and does it.
And she was willing to move to Stillwater with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she had a sister and her husband that lived up there in Stillwater, and he was going to school.
Mm.
So when they would come home from Stillwater back here, they'd come get us and bring us down here with them. You know, we just come on Saturday and have to go back on Sunday. And back then, that was a pretty good trip, them old roads that we had to travel.
I-40 wasn't.
Oh, no turnpike,
Our
no
turnpike.
I-40. It's them little 2-lane roads, curves and hills. And, of course, there wasn't near as much traffic either.
Sure. Well, did you work while you were a student?
Yes. I worked there at the college, sweeping floors most of the time, 50 cents an hour. And I got to work 2 hours a day. So I'd make about $40 a month, and she made $18 a week, and that's what we lived on.
And tuition wasn't quite like it is today, I'm sure.
No, and back the first year I had a scholarship, and gosh, I could buy my books back then for all my books. It cost me less than $20, and you can't buy one book for that now.
And you graduated in,
55,
and your degree was in?
animal science.
Did you have a favorite professor?
Yeah, I had one in the animal husbandry department there that I really liked. In fact, I liked several of them, but his name was Bill Pope, and he had a beef cattle program there, and I liked what he was teaching, and I liked him, and but I liked all them guys over in the H building. They just most of them were just good old country boys, you know.
Mm.
And if you ever need any help, you know, all you had to do is go ask them. They'd help you.
Was the student union already finished when you were there?
They built that while I was going to school up there.
Oh, see, it's about that
in the
time.
library.
Okay, and you was sometime in the 50s. I wasn't quite sure when. At that point, what were your plans when you finished graduating? What were you planning to do?
Just get a good job, make a lot of money.
In the ranching business or something different?
Well, I wanted to work in the ranching business, but but I graduated in May of '55, and I was going to school on a draft department, and I got drafted in July. So I had a job for
A little while there, yeah.
2 years there. I made $38 a month, and she got about $80 or $90 a month off of me. And then she always had a job. But the second year I was up there at Stillwater, I worked on a dairy that summer and made a little money. Didn't make a whole lot, but I saved up about $300, and we were tired of walking and bumming rides, so I went downtown and bought me a little 40 model Chevrolet coupe, and I was proud of that car in any vehicle I ever owned. And I drove it.
You have $280 for it.
Yeah,
New?
I drove it for
No, it wasn't new.
I drove it for a year, and my mother had a cousin over at Fort Smith, Arkansas, that sold Chevrolets, and well, I was wanting one of them new Chevrolet pickups, and I went down and talked to my mother and dad about it, you know, and so she called him over there, and he told her that he'd let me have one for $1,250, brand new Chevrolet. So Daddy went with me to the bank and signed my note to borrow the money, and went down there and bought it, and got home, and one of my neighbors down there come by and looked at it, and he said, "I've got a heater over in my garage. If you want it, I'll sell it to you for $10. So I bought that heater and I put it in myself. And the next summer, I saved up enough money. I bought me a brand new factory radio, and they had it put in. So I had me a new Chevrolet pickup with a radio and a heater, and there wasn't nobody had anything better than that.
And what color was it?
It was dark green.
Dark green. Dark green. And no air conditioning, I guess.
Oh no, nobody else had it either.
Yeah, that's what I didn't think.
Oh, there's some of them guys that their folk had wealthy folks. They drove real fancy cars, you know, but I wouldn't have traded my Chevrolet pickup for any of them.
Well, did you park it in the barn when it was going to rain?
I didn't have a barn.
Okay.
It just had to stay out there and get washed off.
How long did you keep it?
I kept it till I graduated up there at A&M, and we've been wanting a car, and I had that pickup paid for, $40 a week, paid it out, and of course I had some to pay down on it, you know, but let's see, when I graduated, we went down to the Olds place there in Stillwater and bought a new 55 Olds. It was a two-door hardtop. Well, then I had as fancy a car as anybody did up there. But I got drafted and had to leave. And she stayed there and worked. And she come see me a time or two over at Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. And then when I got out of basic training, they sent me to Fort Sill. And I was a clerk in battalion supply there all the time I was over there. And of course she moved over when I went over there, and we lived downtown, you know, and I drove back and forth 8 to 5, and the job that I had, nearly everybody had to pull guard duty and CQ duty as charge of quarters, and I was exempt from that because of my job. So I had a pretty good deal over there. And of course I got out of there in July of '57. And there was a KDK meatpacking company there. And I went down there and asked them about a job. I thought maybe get something buying cattle or doing something with their cattle, you know. And he told me, he said, I've got a ranch about 30 miles northwest of here. And he said, he said, I've got beef cattle on it, and I'm fixing to put in a feeder pig operation out there. And I need somebody to run that for me. And if you want the job, you go out there and try it and see how you like it. And if you do, well, I said, okay. So I went out there and he built, they call them pig parters. And that pig parter, each one of them hold about 50 hogs, and I think we had about 6 of them. And so I stayed there and done the hogs, and that wasn't too bad a job. I had a boy there that worked for me that lived just about a mile from me, and I bought a house trailer and moved it out on the ranch, and I lived in a house trailer. It had a big house on it, but his mother lived in that house. But the boy about a mile south of me there, the Indian boy, worked up there. And he'd come up there every day and clean those pens out. And then they sent a truck out there every day to put feed out. So it wasn't a bad deal for me. And but I got to want to come back to southeastern Oklahoma. I worked there about 2 years and come back home and started teaching school.
Oh, okay.
I taught 2 years at Limestone Gap, and they consolidated with Kiowa, and they brought me up here, and I taught 1 year here at Kiowa, and then what was I went then?
High school?
Yeah. I taught, well now at Gap I taught some in grade school and some in high school. But I taught science and biology and chemistry. And then they had an opening come up here at the state prison for a beef herdsman, and it paid a little more money. So I went up there and went to work as a beef herdsman. I had all the beef cattle for the Department of Corrections. We had a bunch here at McAllister, some in Stringtown. What's the name of that other place down there?
Well, it's somewhere between Lane and Anders.
McLeod. Yeah, McLeod Farm.
Mm-hmm.
So I had cattle at all of those places, and And, if the man was gone from the hog farm, I'd go by and check it every day. Or there was, poultry farm, hog farm, horse and we had a horse and mule barn. And I'd go by and check them. And, then, I had a friend that worked for the health department, and he come and talk to me about going to work for the health department. And, well, it was a good salary increase. So I said, well, I think I'll try that.
You
So-
worked at the Navy base before then, though, didn't you?
No.
When did you work at the Navy base?
Let me see, it was job number 6. I went to work for the Cole County Health Department, and,
Oh, there it is.
yeah, number 6. And, I was an environmental specialist for the county, and, all that time I had worked part of Pontotoc County too, but my main deal was Cole County. And I worked there till '79, and, I was offered a job out here at this, Army ammunition plant as a chemist.
Was it an Army ammunition plant then or Navy base?
You know, I can't remember, it was Navy base.
I think it was Navy base then. It
I
didn't
think it
change
was.
until.
And,
As a chemist,
yes,
had you
Uh,
had chemistry at Oklahoma A&M?
yeah,
In animal science, it was part of that?
yeah. I had 2 classes of chemistry and then 1 class of organic chemistry.
Wow, okay.
And then, there at the ammunition plant, I run all analysis for water treatment plant, all wastewater treatment facilities, including production waste treatment facilities, and run analysis on all the gasoline and all the paints that was used there at the base. And stayed pretty busy. And, then, a guy come back to me from the health department, and they offered me another good deal down to the health department, so I went back over there in November '82. And, went to work at Pittsburgh County and, performed all the environmental health duties up to 1995. Then I was promoted to environmental health specialist supervisor, and, I supervised all the environmental health programs and specialists in 12 counties. And I retired in 1996.
From the health department? Wow.
And,
So during that time, water quality was an issue for you,
oh yeah,
a concern?
yeah, we run in problems, but we get them fixed pretty quick. If we need any help, all I had to do is call the state health department, they had people down here. Then,
Well, during all this time, were you also ranching
yes,
on the side?
yes, on the side.
On the side.
He told me one time he never did see his cattle in the daytime, said he always seen them at night in the wintertime.
Yeah, except on the weekends I get to see them. And, I bought, a couple of places down there in Atoka County, and then, my dad left me a place down there, and he left me this place. It wasn't paid for, but he left it to me, and had finished paying off. It was a good deal because, you know, the payments weren't that high, and it wasn't that. I just had to pay only 3 or 4 years and have them paid off. And So after that, I come back here and all this time I was rodeo part-time, but when I retired in '96, that's when I started rodeoing full-time.
Tell her that story about the Gilmore place when you bought it and made that deal with the doctor about the minerals.
Yeah, let's see. He had all the minerals of that place, and when he priced it to me,
How many acres was that?
160.
160.
I said, what about the minerals? And he said, well, he said, I think we're gonna keep the minerals. And then I had to do all my dealing with him in Oklahoma City. He was a doctor up there, and when we'd have any dealings to do, I'd have to drive to Oklahoma City. And in fact, him and his wife come down to our house one weekend, come down and eat dinner with us. And so he told me the day I went up there to close the deal, he said, me and my wife talked this mineral deal over, and we're gonna keep the minerals for 3 years. And if there's no production on it in 3 years, all the minerals will go to you. And they didn't even try to lease it those 3 years. So I got all 160 acres of minerals. And let's see, I think, what did I give $350 an acre? I give $350 an acre for it. And it wasn't a year till I leased the minerals, and I got $300 an acre. Well, I just had $50 an acre in that place then. And when that lease run out, they come back and leased it again for $300 an acre. So I was $250 an acre ahead. That was just a lucky deal. And of course, he was just being good to me because they didn't have any kids, and he just decided that he wanted me to have the minerals.
Happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And the right person, I guess.
Yeah.
And a good guy that did what he said he was gonna do, didn't he, Wayne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I leased that from him, for 2 or 3 years, I guess. And my dad had leased it back earlier. We got along real good on everything we ever had to do with each other, and I was just real lucky.
Well, it sounds like you were busy though. You had an 8 to 5 job,
Yeah.
plus the ranch job, plus rodeoing part-time.
Yeah,
When did you
just on
sleep?
weekends, just part time,
Oh, you just kept busy.
Yeah.
How much land were you managing at that time?
Oh, I wound up with 1,000 acres, a little over 1,000 acres. That's what we got now. Yeah. I had another place down there that had 130 acres in it, and my sister and her husband inherited the land around it, and bogey run between me and them. And the old fence wasn't any good. Of course, it didn't hurt when my dad was using it because it was his cattle, wherever they were. But my cattle got to getting on him, his cattle got to getting on me, so I said, well, if you go partners with me, I'll buy half the materials and furnish half the labor, and we'll build a brand new fence. He said, okay. So he bought his half the post and the wire, and hired a boy from Wardville. He's a high school boy, and him and his wife own stockyards up here in McAllister now. He married the owner's daughter. But no, I was the one that hired him. I hired him, and my brother-in-law helped him do it. Because I was already pretty well pulled up. And they built that fence right on the edge of the bank on that. And it wasn't 6 months till that fence started falling off in the creek. And my cattle to get over and he had threatened to shoot them. And come up here and go to hollering at me. And in fact, I told him one day, I said, I'll tell you what, you get out of here or I'm gonna call the law and just have them come get you. So he left here cussing out both sides of his mouth. So I just told Joyce, I said, I'm not gonna put up with that. So I put that place up for sale and sold it. And I think I got $300 acre for it. So I wound up with this little over 1,000 acres and got good neighbors everywhere. And I still joined them in places, but it was places where we could have a good fence. And I had my place run up here, and there was a road went there, and I had 15 acres over here on this side, and he had everything that went around it. And I'd had that place for a little over 15 years, and I decided I was going to fence that 15 acres off, and one of the weans and calves, I just put them in there, had a good pond on it, and had an old house and barn. Well, I got a surveyor come in there and surveyed it off, and I went down there and took some posts and started driving posts. And I went down there and went down, all my posts were gone. And he had took them up and thrown them down over there, and I said, that's my fence, and I'm paying for fixing it, so you don't be tearing down my fence. He said, that's my land. I said, no, I got the deed to that land. So he took me to court, and the court gave him that 15 acres because he had been under his fence for 15 years, and he had used it all that time, and I hadn't charged him any rent. If I'd have charged him rent, then it'd still been mine. But then he later on went down there on down the road where I joined him down there, and my fence was over on that place some, not 15 acres worth, but probably between 5 and 10 acres. I went down there one day, and he was cutting up across my pasture, building fence. Well, I had my tractor down there, and I just hooked onto it and drug it out across the pasture, post, bar, and all. and he come down there and told me I couldn't do that, and I said, I already did. I said, I've used that for over 15 years, and it's mine. And he never said nothing else. He come and got his post and wire, because he's the one that got that court deal started, and he knew he couldn't do that. But there's Red Dog got that thing laced down there now. The guy laced it, and I get along good with him. Of course, him and her both died, and the girls have got it.
Well, during all this time, were you doing conservation practices on the property, various pieces?
Yes.
Like what?
Well, nose and timber, brush hogging, sprigging Bermuda grass, fertilizing.
That Allen place had big gullies in it when you first got it.
Yeah, it was run right down the side of that mountain, that water run off of it, and it had cut big gullies out all the way down through there. And I took a dozer in there and backsloped them gullies and sprayed it in Bermuda grass. And that way I could go in there and mow it. But you couldn't even drive a tractor across it. But you can drive across it now.
Well, at what point did you get involved with the conservation district?
Well, the guy that was chairman of the board up there was one of my school teachers when I was going to school. Of course, him and my dad was good friends. They'd been around him all my life. Of course, I was going in and out up there, you know, and he hit me up one day and wanted me to start coming to our meetings. I said, okay. So I started to come to the meetings, and I can't remember just when it was, but that I done that, but it was in, I believe it was in January. Or was it, when did I go to
It's in
work?
79.
Huh?
In 79 when you got to be a board member, 79.
Just trying to remember what month.
I don't remember what month it would have been.
But anyway, wasn't long till they appointed me to the board up there in 79, and I've been there ever since.
Almost 40 years. I'm trying to do the math in my head. At least
Yeah,
40.
I think it's in March. It'll be 40 years.
And was that an elected position or appointed?
It's a.
It's appointed now.
It's a.
Appointed now.
I think it's an appointed position now. It may not have been then, but they switched.
Have it changed it?
They switched positions sometime
Yeah,
along the way.
It was appointed. I don't know whether they changed it or not.
Well, during those 40 years, what were some hot topics or issues you had to deal with? Were there any?
Well, we never did have any real bad ones.
Okay.
Did you think of anything, Brad?
No,
We've had good people to work with, and
Well, it was Pittsburgh County?
yeah.
What are some unique things about Pittsburgh County that you would have to deal with that maybe someone in the Panhandle wouldn't? It's, you know, differences in the districts.
well, brush control would be the main thing, and erosion,
Flooding. We got
and what?
19 flood control structures that started getting built
Yeah.
in about 75, and up until 99 was the last time we had any of them built, and a lot of people lost cattle and
Boy, it
things.
has really helped this country too. It stopped all that flooding. Not all of
Watershed.
it, but we used to, every time it rained, you couldn't go down here and go across that highway to Wardville, going to Colgate, because it'd be underwater. And my dad, of course, that creek runs through right there, where that gets underwater. And he lost several cattle over in them floods. And we went over one time after the water went down. There's one of them cows up in a tree. She had drowned and floated up there and hung up in that tree. Don't I've ever heard of that happening.
Well, would you have to help get easements for the structures?
I can't
Or is
remember
that
how
somebody
we
else?
got those easements to use.
Somebody else's.
They did before the easements were kind of in place whenever those lakes started getting built in the 70s, and we only had probably 5 or 6 sites that were built after Wayne got on the board. You know, a lot of them were already built before then, and the easements, of course, were in place before that they were built. So Wayne didn't have to do much of that, but
Yeah, none of them people wanted them, you know.
Wayne got involved here in the last probably 10 or so years with that Oklahoma's for Responsible Water policy, and was you on that board, or was that just?
Yeah.
He was on that board, and that, you know, when they were going to have a water sale to Texas and all that stuff, and he fought that. He fought that hard.
If it hadn't been for old RWP, I think we'd have lost our water to Texas.
Wow.
Of course, we went on what the attorneys was telling us, and they said if they ever come across that river and get water, they was going to send it to Dallas. He said, once they get up here, if they get to need more, they can come get more when they get ready for it. And I said, that ain't no good deal. I wasn't for selling any of it because our needs were going up for water usage too. And I sure didn't want to sell that water. We finally got it shut down.
Have to go to the Capitol and argue your case?
Oh, yeah, we was up there, the Capitol several times, going around talking to the senators and representatives, you know. I think it was, wasn't that one of the years that I got some kind of award for,
Well, you got one award, you got elected to the, or whatever, inducted into the Conservation Hall of Fame.
2007.
Yeah. Yeah. But Wayne serves on every board. I mean, as far as a public servant, he serves on every board that he's asked to serve on. He's been on the Kiowa Economic Development District of Oklahoma, which
yeah, I went on it in
for years.
1976. And that's been real good to our area.
And all of these are volunteer basis. It's not paid gigs.
Hadn't had a paycheck from the Conservation District in probably 10 years.
Been a while.
They don't,
They
our
do.
board, none of our board takes the money, you know, when the budget's getting tight, they just take it, let us keep it.
Well, what's involved being a member, going to meetings and making, I don't know, talking to the community if something needs to be changed and that sort of thing?
Well, anytime the state sends something down, you know, we work with them on that. And we've got, I think we've got real good participation, don't you, in the county here on this soil conservation. We've got good cooperators.
How many are on the board for this district? The 5 like all the other ones?
Yeah, we
5.
got 5.
And then we got some associate members. They come to the meetings, they can't vote, but they sit in that way. If something happens to one of the board members, we got one to stick right in there.
And were you involved with the Association of Conservation Districts, whatever that OACD?
Yeah, I was on that OECD board. I can't remember, isn't that on that sheet there,
Yeah.
the boards that are on?
Well, it may not be on this one, but,
You were the Area 5 Director for 5 terms?
mhm.
That's a long, I'm assuming a term was, what, 2 years?
No, it's probably, well, it could have been a year.
A year.
Could've been a year.
Probably a year.
Yeah.
And that's as many as you could, I read it. You termed out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then I served on the school board here. I can't remember how many years I was on it. I wrote down on that piece of paper.
Belongs to the Masonic Lodge, belongs to the Masonic Lodge and has forever. How long you been on Masonic Lodge?
Gosh, I can't remember. It's
And they
been
do,
a long time.
raise money for people when their houses burn, or just always doing something.
I've been through all the officers in that too.
So you have an active calendar.
Pretty active.
Cattlemen Association.
Yeah, I was president of the Cattlemen Association 2 years, I think.
Pittsburgh County Cattlemen's.
Yeah. And they give me some kind of award, and then they give me a life membership.
And you retired in 95,
6.
96. But you're not really. If you're still doing all of this, you
He's not
really
retired.
haven't.
He hadn't retired yet. He,
From an 8 to 5 job, I guess you have.
Tanya, I'll tell you something about him. He's an accomplished, he don't have his equipment anymore, he's an accomplished leather craftsman. And he is, and I don't know how many of these things he done, but for years, when somebody would get married, he would build them like a plaque that said "No loafing around here," and it spelled R-O-U-N, no loafing around here, and stamp their name on the bottom of it for them to hang on their wall as a wedding gift. And them things are everywhere. I bet I can go to 15 houses right now that has them, and I have one in my house. And he has, see that feather on the wall that you can see right in there? That's
Yes.
made out of leather.
Oh.
You wanna look at it?
Yeah, you better look at it.
We will before I leave, okay?
Yeah, you better look
Okay.
before you leave. But
Now, how did you learn to do that?
I started doing that when I was going to college, up there in Stillwater. Had some friends, they were single, 3 or 4 of them living in an apartment. And I'd go by there once in a while and visit, you know, and there's a couple of them that's doing that leather work in there. And I got trying to get them to make me a belt with my name on it. And one boy said, "We can't keep up with the business we got." He said, "If you want a belt, get over and make it." And he said, "We'll help you." And so that's where I got started. I made me a belt.
and you made belts for kids. How many kids' belts have you made?
I don't have no
500?
I don't have no way. I've probably got more leather tools than anybody in this country, unless it be a store somewhere, you know.
Well, could you have made your own saddle then?
I worked up at the rodeo shop. I had a good friend that made saddles up there, and we made saddles up there. My part of it was mostly tubing, and he always had somebody in there that knew how to shape them seats and everything before they covered them, you know. But my job was, I just had the leather in there and I sat there and tubed it.
Are you good with your hands? Were you a good mechanic?
Not too good. Something breaks down, I'll work on it, we get out and then get somebody to come fix it. But once in a while I'll fix something.
You know your limitations.
Yeah. I sure do on that.
Well, did you have children?
Yeah, I had 2 boys and 3 boys and a girl.
And did you teach them any of this?
No, I don't. Greg might have done a little bit of that sometime, but they weren't interested in that.
Wasn't Greg a mechanic though? And
Yeah, Greg was a mechanic.
he wasn't a mechanic, but Greg was a mechanic. His son
Yeah,
was
he's
a
a
mechanic.
good mechanic too.
Were they in 4-H or FFA?
Not real active. They did do some livestock showing, but I never did make them do it. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. But I didn't push them.
Yeah.
And I put 2 of my boys in the cattle business, and the oldest one didn't stay too long. And he sold out and got out. He don't care nothing about cattle business, but Greg does. He likes it, and he works on it. In fact, he's taking care of mine now. Mine and his. He worked on a brush hog all day yesterday. He told me he's gonna try to get done early this morning, get started brush hogging.
Well, is he involved with the conservation district in any way?
Well,
Not yet?
he doesn't own any land.
Oh, you have to, okay.
I've got it set up where he will, but
And you have to be a producer or
You're supposed to own a certain amount of acres.
To be on the board. Okay.
Somewhere, maybe about 40 acres. wasn't it?
20, I think.
Is it 20?
20, yeah.
I knew it wasn't very much.
Greg stays pretty busy though. He's kind of a racehorse trainer and
He don't do as much of that now as he did because he just don't have time, but he still, oh, that place over this side of Fort Smith,
Salsa.
Salisaw, he's got a guy over there has him come over and do something that every once in a while.
Right.
And
Well, did he know your father? Was your dad still alive when your kids were growing up?
yes.
So he knew a little bit about the mule training.
Do what?
He knew about the mule training, breaking.
I don't know. I guess he'd heard about it. I don't know.
Yeah, they were already out of that by the time he came along, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But curious if granddad did this. So, what was your dad's name?
Merle,
Merle. And your mom?
Ruby.
Okay.
Now, Merle your dad was on the board in Atoka County, wasn't
Yeah.
he? His dad was on the Conservation District Board in Atoka County.
Okay. Runs in the family then, huh?
Yeah.
And then, was it he or you that got a cooperator award in Atoka County one time?
Where's that sheet at? I got one. I don't know if tell what county I got it in or not.
I don't know, this is a sheet you gave me, but all that is just employment, but I don't know.
There's another one at least.
Oh, there is, let me see if I can find it now. Oh, yeah, right here. Yeah, it talks about your military service and,
Where's the one that's got the award on it?
it's probably on here, Wayne. Probably got back here. Yeah, honors and awards. Soil and
Yeah.
Water Conservation District Cooperator Award 1976, that was in Atoka County. And then Outstanding Service Award for Pittsburgh County Cattlemen's Association in 1978. And then 2001 Lifetime Membership Award, Pittsburgh County Cattlemen's Association. And 2007 Hall of Fame. 2012 he's a deacon in First Baptist Church in Kiowa. So.
Those in the 70s, that was about the time period you were working another job and still active enough to get awards. That says something.
Mm-hmm.
Good steward of the land.
Yep.
Well, I like to take care of it. I'm not doing a good job now as I used to. I just can't get out there and do it
Yeah.
stuff anymore.
When was the last time you were on a horse?
It's been a good while. I used to keep 6 to 8 horses here all the time, and I got down to one horse, and all I ever done was feed him. And of course, Greg's got a place out there at Ashland, and he's got horses out there. And I told him one day, I said, if you want that old sorrel horse, just take him home with you. I'm gonna get rid of him, because all I do is feed him. So he took him home with him. He sold him 2 or 3 months after he got him. But he trades around on horses.
Well, it seems like with your work, it just seemed to happen. People came looking for you.
Well, I don't know. I just always there when something happens, I guess.
Did you like teaching school, or do you just wanted to do something different, or?
Yeah, I liked it all right, but I didn't like it as good as I did working with livestock.
Well, of all the jobs you held, did you have a favorite?
The other one I got now,
Oh, retired, huh?
working for myself.
Working for yourself.
But I like
Fair enough.
I liked taking care of livestock for the prison.
Do they still do that, or do they still have their own?
Yeah.
Does
Yeah,
the
they-
prison still has their
Yeah,
own?
they still do.
But they got a lot of land.
They got dairy. They do the milk for all the inmates in the state, and they got the dairy. They feed them.
Hmm.
Got they used to have a canning thing in Stringtown and a butcher shop at McAllister, didn't they? The
Yeah.
prison up there. They got a dairy at McAllister.
And when I was taking care of all them places, we had that, there's a wildlife refuge across the highway there at
Stringtown.
Stringtown.
Mhm.
I had cattle on it too.
Mhm.
I was bringing some cattle up over that hill just before where them buildings are.
Uh-huh.
Come up over that hill and I was riding a young horse. And I don't remember what happened, but that horse started bucking with me. And several people in cars pulled over on the side of the road and went to honking their horn and hollering. I was lucky. I was able to ride him until I got him pulled up. But they got to see a free show anyway.
He's had a lot of broken bones riding in horses.
Yeah.
He broke one leg 3 times and the other one twice.
Yeah, but, well, that knee, I wish it'd been a leg, but it was that knee. I had to have it replaced. And the worst deal I ever got into was when I fell and broke my hip, and I'm just walking across the street.
No horse.
No. We've been up Tulsa, and there's a place down on about 78th Street, I think, coming back. There's a little deal there's got a few little stores in it, and they got a Cracker Barrel there. And I always liked to eat at Cracker Barrel. We went in there and ate, and done it 100 times, I guess. And come out of there and started to my pickup, and I wasn't picking my feet up, I guess, and stuck my toe and fell and hit right on my left hip and broke it. And they just loaded me up in ambulance, and I went right back to Tulsa, and I had to stay a few days.
Well, with the water issue selling to the states, that was resolved. I'm assuming that they changed the policy or something.
I hope so. We haven't had a meeting, or we got a lady that got this thing started, and they had a meeting a week or two ago, and I had a doctor's appointment in Tulsa that day, and I didn't get to go to it yet. But,
They're always gonna try to be getting this water.
yeah,
I mean, they're Dallas, they don't,
but
they're growing faster than they got room to
there for
put
a while.
water.
There for a while, we'd have a meeting there every week.
Was there a lake in Pittsburgh County, or just the rivers mostly that they're?
You follow.
You follow it?
Yeah.
But that, what they were trying to get water out of was the Comanche River basin and the Red River. And,
Well, they could have gone on to lakes too.
Yeah.
If they'd ever got in here.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any difference. All they had to do is get their foot in the door. But so far, we've been able to keep that from happening.
I would think some of the tribes might have something to say.
They helped
About
y'all.
those
They helped
issues,
y'all,
too.
didn't they? Didn't Choctaws help y'all?
Yeah,
They helped
Yeah,
y'all
they-
fight.
they supported us.
But the Oklahoma City ended up getting Sardis Lake. And so, anyway, I think they just figured out there was people in state that needed it too, and so they diverted the people that was wanting it from Texas by giving some of it to Oklahoma City and sending it out west, so that at least it wouldn't be obligated to another state.
Well, would the conservation district office have much to say about that, or is this separate?
It's kind of, well, it's a individual policy. Decide where you stand on it, but that's where all of our group have stood on it, and our board members and stuff, and Wayne's kind of led the pack, and so, you know,
I don't know if they come in on private land and take water or not, can they?
no, not right
I
now.
don't think they could. I've got 2 ponds that they built on me down there when they're drilling them wells, and water are they about 200 yards square,
Probably. They hold a lot of water.
about 14, 15 foot deep, and they built the ponds, and when they filled up the water, and when they started drilling, they bought water from me.
It's a resource, isn't it?
Yeah. I was glad just to get the pond because, you know, it don't hurt to have that water, but you got 2 places in Polk County, you got them big ponds on.
Well, on the watersheds, they built dams too? Or are there any structures on your property from the watershed structures?
Wayne don't have any.
No, I don't have
Any
any.
structures on him. We only have one of our board members that actually has a site on his property, but
AJ,
no, Ben,
oh yeah.
Ben has
yeah.
one on him.
Have they built all that need to be built?
No,
in this?
there was 43 proposed in Pittsburgh County and only built 19. Actually, there was 43 proposed in the Brushy Peaceful Watershed and only 18 were built there. But we have had one in place to be constructed for about 18 years, and we got word earlier in the summer that they're going to proceed with that. So we may be getting a new one for the first time in 20 years. So that's a big thing nowadays. So, but yeah, how we got started with this was the sites that had one individual landowner that owned the entire, you know, easement area. If they were in favor of doing it, that was easy. Just get that one easement, and the engineers drew up all the stuff, and we built it. Then after we did those, we got to the two landowners, and so on until it got so complex with, you know, who had to sign easement where and getting everybody that wanted it done, and it finally played out. The money ran out, and it got too difficult to get the easements. So. But we have had one in place that was very difficult to get for about 18 years, and that's the one we're fixing to hopefully get built.
And it's still deemed a needed one?
Yeah, yeah. All these sites, or 18 sites, are on Brushy and Peaceful Creek watersheds, and those creeks go into Lake Eufaula, and they come together. Brushy and Peaceful Creeks come together just outside of Haleyville, and all down that stream, everybody that owns land, anybody that owns land and has for very long can tell you what good they do as far as getting out into their pastures and drowning their cattle or washing out the roads and all that. And the school buses that couldn't run after a 2-inch rain or 3-inch rain can continue to run where they couldn't, you know, 50 years ago they couldn't run. So, but
Well, has one helped? You mentioned your dad was flooded.
Do what?
So you mentioned your dad's land was flooded. Has one of these structures helped that area?
No, there's not any down in there.
Not down there yet.
It's on Bogey.
there's
There's
some
some back up north there.
Yeah, there's
somewhere.
there's some sites in Hughes County and in Cole County
Yeah.
that's on the upper Muddy Boggy watershed that slow that water down.
And it has helped down there. That road don't flood like
Yeah.
it used to.
We only have one site in Pittsburgh County that's on upper Muddy Boggy watershed, but it's right on the Hughes Pittsburgh County line, and there's a lot of lakes over in Hughes County that are on that same watershed that slow that water down coming that way. So, yeah, they've helped it.
Yeah, we used to when it ran 3 or 4 inches, school buses couldn't run. And we went to a wedding, it's been about 2 or 3 weeks ago. we went to wedding down there at Wardville, and we had to go from here to Ashland and back to Colgate that way, and then back to Wardville to get in there. But by the time the wedding and the celebration was over with, somebody had come through and come up there and said that the road was still underwater, but you could see those white border lines, and if you could see them border lines, you can make it pretty good.
That was after about 11 inches of rain.
Yeah.
A gully washer, as we
Yeah,
would call it.
some people got as much as 14 inches.
Well, as long as Wayne's been on the board, out of those 19 flood control structures, only one had ever went out the emergency spillway until 2015. We had 89 inches of rain that year, and we had 13 of our lakes went out the spillway in the spring, in May, and then 15 of them went out during the flood in December, when we got 10 or 11 inches of rain in December during terrible flood. And that's the only time we've had a flood event that's caused those lakes to be, pushed to their limits.
Well, did the people below them fuss at that time then if they didn't,
Oh,
they
no.
didn't do their job?
No, they didn't.
They understood that.
Yeah, in fact, our county commissioner now was our district manager for 7 or 8 years before I came along, and he was the one that had to repair a lot of roads, but he understands that he might have had to repair them there, but he has saved a lot of money for them being built
Yeah.
on all these other situations where it rains 4 or 5 inches, and they handle that rainfall.
Well, does the district have to, is it anything on the endangered species in Pittsburgh County impacted by that? Like
Affected by the watersheds?
by the endangered species law, like prairie chickens, what I'm coming to
Oh,
mind,
no.
but that's not here.
I don't think we have
Anything
hardly
like
any endangered species around here that we're worried about.
very
We got
illegal?
some coming in that we wish they were endangered,
Yeah.
like fire ants and wild hogs.
Osage County's having a problem with wild hogs. Interviewed someone up there.
Them all hogs and fire ants both are bad here.
Fire ants I haven't heard much about. Are they bad for cattle or what?
If they stand still, they are.
Oh, does
Yeah.
it sting them?
Oh,
we,
my.
we just got through treating a bunch of them ant hills in this yard. Them things get on you, they hurt you worse than red ant.
That's from a week ago right there.
Wow,
When
from
I
an
got
ant?
Yeah, fire
From one
ant.
ant.
One fire ant.
And they're little bitty ants. You don't even notice them until they bite you.
You'll just see a small pile of dirt, and even have a lot of grass growing up to it. And if you stand in it for just that long, they'll just come right up your shoe, and you don't want to wear sandals or anything like that. But we didn't have them until how long ago, Wayne? Maybe 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it hadn't been any longer than
And
that.
they're just,
What had made them appear? Do you have any idea?
well, they've been in Texas migrating this way, through hay, and when hay gets moved, and pipe and things, oil field stuff. And who knows, but
Well, they had to cross the river somehow, is what I'm
they're
thinking.
good swimmers or something, but they have, they're getting to be a terrible problem, and I don't know what it was this year. They weren't terrible bad until about 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
and they just exploded again around here, and
Well, is there a pesticide that's approved for use on them?
yeah, but you can't, there's so many of them that
you just can't get them all.
you can't get them all. I mean, there's just millions of them things, piles of them, and
Craig got some stuff the other day and put out in it. Of course, I couldn't smell it because my nose is like my ears, they don't work too good anymore. But he said, boy, that stuff really stinks.
yeah, I've used it too.
But
It stinks.
he said it's working pretty good.
But some of them, you won't even see them. You can't see every pile. They're kind of hard to spot.
Yeah.
They're not like a big ant pile, piled up, big bare dirt. Some of them are just right out in that grass, and it's hard to see them.
Is that a question the district gets a lot?
We get calls on that, and we get calls on hogs and traps, and we've put on programs for hog, people to learn about how to get them, trap them, kill them, whatever. But they're multiplying so fast that, and in this part of the country, as you can see, we got a lot of hiding places for them. So they're gonna overtake us down here, I'm afraid. They multiply. We've had smart people from the State Department of Ag come down here and tell us that if you don't kill 70% of them, then they keep multiplying. And there's no way we're going to kill 70% of them. There's no way. There's too much cover for them for us to be able to do that. So.
Are armadillos same way here?
No, armadillos they're not a nuisance, I would say. They're there. They make holes, and
I was thinking cattle would fall in and trip in them, but
well,
They're not near as bad as hogs and barheads, so.
yeah, they don't multiply like hogs do.
well, they
Have a whole bunch of litters, and
have a dozen at a time or something, don't they?
they might. But I bet out of that dozen, I bet so many of them drowned because they don't have. They're not smart enough to have their babies in areas that don't get flooded out or whatever. And we kill a bunch of armadillos. They come out. They got to come out. And they come out in the evenings, and people shoot them and run over them. But
Well, I mean, I was thinking too, the hogs probably have a dozen a litter.
the hogs do.
A litter.
Yeah, they certainly do.
They don't serve any good purpose.
The hogs.
Yeah.
Have you found anything they're good for?
No.
Nothing.
But you can eat them if you're tough enough. If you think you're tough enough to eat them,
I wouldn't want to eat one of them.
some people do.
Yeah.
But they just destroy your hay meadows, and as far as driving a tractor across them, they just beat your equipment to pieces. And
So mess up your pastures. And like he said, hay meadows, it's really bad.
So you've been on the district board for 40-ish years. Any plans to step off?
Yeah,
That's a loaded
when
question.
he gets old, one of these days when he gets old,
Going for 50.
I doubt if I'm going to stay around that long. If he leaves today, I'm going with him.
Okay. Then he has to stay at least 10 or 15 then.
Do I?
10 or 15 more years.
Well, he'll probably still be there when I leave, but I won't be there when he leaves.
Are there any women on the board?
Yeah,
Are there? That's been
Yeah,
slow in coming from what I understand.
yeah. She's a pretty good board member.
she's been on there several years. She's got her 15-year. 15-year.
Yeah, she was a banker and she got a place out south of McAllister there.
We've covered a lot. Is there anything else on your list that you needed to talk
I
about?
don't think so. Just I'll put on the wrong glasses. The leather stuff is amazing that you need to see it
Yeah,
before you leave. It's hard to put on camera, but you can take pictures of it though.
What do you have any advice for someone that might be interested in getting into the conservation aspect of things?
Well, that's one of the best things to do if they got the land. That's one of the best things they can ever do is get into conservation and go to work on some of the programs and the real good thing about that is they'll help you pay for it.
We have a good cost share program there. Helped a lot of people get a lot of conservation practices on the ground.
Yeah.
Ponds, especially ponds. Around here, ponds are so important. We get the rainfall, so we need the ponds in place to catch it.
Right.
So that for water quality, soil erosion, and the livestock part of it, as far as and wildlife, as far as the water, and our board is so supportive. That's the reason if my board wasn't supportive, I wouldn't still be here. But my board, known them all forever, and they're good folks, and they support me and support the conservation district and our program. So there's hadn't had a reason to leave.
Well, I'd say we got as good a board as anybody's got.
Almost have, probably the only, I just know we're the only district in the state that every year at this annual OECD meeting that every one of our board members will be there almost every year. And that's expensive for us to go because they don't get that paid for. It has to be from funds that we make there at the district for equipment rental and programs. But we've always had the money to send them, and they've always wanted to participate and go. And so it would be a different deal if we had a state meeting and our whole board wasn't there. They would miss us. But
A good group.
yeah, very good group.
Or is there anything you want to add before I ask my last question?
Gosh, we've talked about so many things, I can't even think of anything now.
Well, I usually end with asking the person how do they want to be remembered.
Well, I just like to be remembered as someone that helped things get better.
Well, I don't think there'd be anybody to argue with you that you didn't succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And you got your saddle.
Yeah, I got my saddle.
He bought one later on though, like the one that he wanted that he didn't get.
Brand new, they cost $50. I give $300 for this, and it was an old saddle.
It was an old saddle.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us. It's been great.
Well, thank you.